Good evening, everyone online. We are ready to start. Busi will be running point this evening with the webinar and welcoming you all. Welcome back to Tabiso. Busi, I'm handing over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Let me switch on my camera. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Busi, and this will be the second session of our interview and CV preparation training. Thank you for joining. I just need to note that anybody that has a question, if you're not brave enough to raise your hand and ask the question, you're more than welcome to share the questions on the chats. And if you are brave enough, then please go ahead, raise your hand and ask the question. Tabiso, I'll hand over to you. Thank you so much.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much, Busi. I don't know if everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can. We can, Tabiso, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Just one request. Can you please help me with the questions or any hands raised as I continue with the presentation? I'm unable to see the other side of the screen, and maybe let me also share my camera. Also can't tell if my camera is showing on your side or not, but yeah, let's proceed. Thank you so much again for joining the second session. You would remember on the previous session we touched quite a number of basic requirements or basic insights relating to CV writing, what you need to do, how to position yourself, and quite a number of tips in terms of what to do going forward to better understand the job search or the job market. And then during our last session, we ended on CV writing, tailoring your CV for a specific job. And then I'll be briefly speaking about that. And I'll also go to an example of a CV that I wrote myself in November last year, where I submitted to a company and tailored for a specific job. And I'll also explain how I tailored the CV for that particular job and the outcome that resulted from that tailoring of the CV, together with any reasons as to why you tailor for a particular job and why certain sections within your CV are important when tailoring. And then again, I'll also be touching on the common mistakes to avoid. And again, there's two CVs that I'll be reviewing at the end or towards the end or during the session. And then I'll also explain some of the areas that need to be improved on, some of the areas that need to be looked at, and also if there are any tips that need to be taken away from that going forward. So to start with, I just want to touch on tailoring your CV for specific jobs. So when you tailor your CV for specific job, I know this can be quite a tedious exercise because you have to create a new CV each time you apply for a specific role. As and when they say they're looking for a candidate attorney, that's you there busy drafting a whole new CV from scratch. And then when they say they're looking for maybe somebody in compliance, you are again changing the same CV to match that particular area and so on and so on. So when you tailor your CV for any job, you have to start with the job description. Usually job descriptions, you would find them on, maybe it's on LinkedIn, maybe it's on any other platform that you use to search for your jobs. So there are quite a number of job search platforms that you can use for this. And then with the job description, you're going to look at what the company is looking for, what they are trying to achieve with that particular role. And then once you have established this, you can match your skills and experience with whatever they are looking for. And then you can customize your summary the summary is the most important part of your CV because that's where HCM or HR in other cases will know whether to proceed reading your CV or not. And then you also have to highlight relevant experience. So why relevant experience? It has to be relevant to that specific job that you are applying for. And you'll know it's relevant by looking at what you have versus what they have on the job description. And then you showcase your relevant skills. Relevant comes in again. You have to narrow your skills down to what they have on the job descriptions. And this does not have to be a copy and paste of the list of skills they have on the job description, but then there has to be some level of similarity between them wanting somebody who has good communication skills and you mentioning communication on your CV. And then you have to quantify achievements if you do have achievements that are quantifiable. So for example, with quantifiable achievements, I can give a few examples in my case. I have written 2 policies for the company since I joined. And if I'm going to be applying for a company that's looking for someone who can write a policy for them, this is where I can showcase that to say I did write 2 policies that were later approved. And then the 2 becomes the quantifying factor, and it shows that you have done something more than once and you're probably good at doing whatever that is. And then sometimes it even works with percentages, mostly in sales related jobs. Maybe somebody might say, I grew revenue by 30% over the last 2 years, or I grew revenue by 100%, things like that. Quantifying achievements always make a CV stand out. And I highly recommend this. And then you include your relevant certifications. Again, relevance comes into the picture. You have to ensure that the certificates you include when tailoring the CV for that specific job are only those relevant to that particular job. We get to have quite a number of certificates. Like if I were to list the number of certificates I have myself, I've lost count. They're probably more than 20. But then a lot of them are not relevant for compliance or are not relevant for any other role that I may be interested in. You have to narrow them down to what is relevant for that particular job you are applying for. So even if you list two certificates, it's still okay as long as they are relevant to the job. And then you're going to adjust your education section. Why adjust your education section? You apply the same approach as with your certifications. You have to only list education that is relevant to the job you are applying for. And with education, again, the other advice I can give is that if you are somebody who has been in the job market, or not necessarily the job market, or has been a professional in a particular area for quite a long time, some of the old educational certificates, qualifications, you do not need to include in your CV to allow for enough space on your CV. So how will allowing enough space on your CV, or what do I mean by allowing enough space on your CV? If you've had your metric in, let's say maybe in the 90s, I don't think it is still necessary for you to include metric on your CV. But then if you did matriculate in 2021, maybe it's recent, you can include your metric in your CV. So why do I say if it's older, you do not need to include it? You know, sometimes you find that you have completed quite a number of qualifications over your lifetime. You've had your admissions, you've had a lot. So even if you did not include the metric on your CV to save space, whoever is going to be going through your CV, they will know that you did your metric, because how come you have 4 qualifications, 3 masters, and a lot more, though you do not have metric? So sometimes it's not necessary to include some of the very old qualifications unless they are relevant to the particular job. Obviously, if you did LLB in the 90s, but you are applying to be a judge at a particular court, you can still include your LLB because it is a requirement in that area. And then you have to use a professional font. And with the font, you always have to ensure that you stick to a few readable fonts. Few readable fonts, I mean, be it 2 or 3. If you're going to have a CV that has many fonts, different fonts, it will be hard for whatever ATS platform they are going to be using. So there are quite a number of ATS platforms that companies use depending on the service provider that they have on board. So it is best that you stick to, even if it's just 2 fonts on your CV. So it will be maybe 1 font for your name and the headings, and then another font for the content. It has to be consistent all throughout. And then you have to proofread, obviously, your CV, and then you edit to ensure that you send it without any typos. The language has to be straightforward. It has to be clear. Whoever is going to be reading your CV must understand what you mean without having to have any questions. You can imagine the level of pressure that comes with being in HR. Now you find a CV that has quite a number of things that are missing. You won't have that time to call the candidate and say, please fix 1, 2, 3 so that we can hire you. Normally what they would do is simply go to the next, and that's the last thing you want happening to your CV. And then you have to tailor your cover letter, which I'll also speak to in the next slide. And then you highlight transferable skills. What do I mean by transferable skills? This should be only the skills, or rather any skills that you have obtained throughout your career that apply to the job you are applying for at the time. So even if this mostly work if you're going to be switching careers, you have been in legal practice your entire life, you have been practicing going to court, litigating, but now you have decided, let me go corporate, I want to be a senior counsel. When you apply, obviously the area for senior counsels is quite different to what you do when you litigate, meaning a lot of the things that happen on the other side, you do not have the experience. But then with the transferable skills, you can simply show how you have been doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are similar to what they have within their company. Even though you don't have the senior legal counsel experience, you did litigate in court and you are a good, maybe legal researcher, and you can give good legal advice. That will put you at a better position to be called for the next step. And then the common mistakes to avoid, I'll just run through this. So you have to avoid any spelling or grammar errors. You have to avoid using generic resume templates. So by templates, I'm referring to an example with, there's a platform called Canva. So Canva is used by many people to develop or design anything that you can think of. So it's a good design platform, and sometimes people even use it for CVs. So if you're going to be using CVs from platforms such as your Intelligent CV, your Canva, and a lot more others, they will not be suitable for ATS platforms, because ATS will not be able to identify which wording follows which. So as soon as they put the CV on the platform, it ruins the entire sequence. So you'd find that education goes to experience. Now it says experience, and under experience it says LLB. So the system can pick up whether the experience is the skills or what. I don't know if that makes sense. But then what I've seen with the Canva drafted CVs is the challenge that sometimes the platform fails to pick up the information as is. And then you have to ensure that you only include relevant information. If it's not relevant, do not include. You have to avoid being too vague. And you also have to avoid selling yourself way, way too high. You have to sell yourself high, but not way, way too high, as in mentioning things like exceptional communicator. You can simply stick to good communicator. And then that way, at least, you can substantiate during a verbal interview. And then you have to avoid overloading your CV with many keywords, and you have to stick to simply understandable language, and then have a professional email address on the CV. Avoid any nicknames on your email address that you're going to be using on your CV, and then ensure that the formatting is good, the alignment is good, there's good chronology as well. Whoever is going to be reading your CV must be able to understand that under this topic is the skills. They shouldn't be confused as to whether the skills fall under experience or experience comes after education or not. They should be able to understand where everything is the moment they see your document. And then you have to avoid way, way too long CVs. Mostly 1 page for fresh graduates is enough, or graduates with 1 year or less experience. 2 pages is enough for people with less than 3 years experience. And then 3 pages is also enough for people who have been in the game for quite a long time. So you have to narrow it down to quite a few pages. It does not have to be 10 pages or 20. And then it has to focus on the job that you are applying for. And then you have to include all the important sections. What are important sections? Your education, your experience if you have worked before, your skills, your contact details are the most important, your address, your name, obviously. And then you have to avoid using cliches and buzzwords. I've already spoken about the buzzwords. And then you have to tailor the professional summary for the job you are applying for. It does not have to be generic. Okay, yeah, and I said I'll speak also about the cover letters. So with cover letters, they are not always a requirement in most cases, but then should one be required from you, you also have to follow the same approach of tailoring it for the particular job. Ensure that you include the necessary job on the cover letter. I see we have a hand.
It's me, Tabiso. I just wanted to ask if the attendees are allowed to ask questions as you go along, so that if they've got anything they want you to clarify on a slide, if they've got questions, can they raise their hand and then we unmute them and they ask the question and we move on? Because this is such an important part, and we would really want to make sure that they before you move on, they are clear on exactly what it is that you're saying, because this is where some of them get stuck. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I'm happy for anyone who has a question to simply raise a hand along the way. And then if I can see the hand, may you kindly assist with the hands.
We can do so, or they can just type their questions in the chat, and then the team is online and they can read it for you. Because I just met one, because this must be an interactive session as much as Tabis was taking you through this, but this is your chance to ask the questions, because after this, you will not get an opportunity. So please use this opportunity, ask the questions, because this is to your benefit. Thanks, Tabis.
Thank you. And then, as I was saying with the cover letters, you have to follow the same approach again. Ensure that it is tailored for the company you're applying for, and ensure that you limit the information to only what is required at the time. So you have to have your personal introduction. You have to highlight any key qualifications in the cover letter. You have to demonstrate that you are fit for the job you are applying for. Explain career transitions if you are trying to transition from one area to another. With the example I've given, maybe you were a litigating attorney and now you want to go into corporate, and then you have to showcase your skills again. But then with showcasing your skills and qualifications, you do not have to copy everything as is from your CV and put it on the cover letter. It has to be a bit different, but then simply substantiate what you couldn't include in the CV. So sometimes you find that you wanted to explain how good of a course you did at a particular institution and the details around how it went about, but then the CV limits you. This is where you're going to explain that. And then you have to express enthusiasm. You have to show that you are good at what you say you're gonna do for the company. And then you have to address the specific requirements from the job description. You have to provide any additional information that you couldn't include in the CV, and then ensure that it creates a positive first impression to the recruiter, and then encourage further communication. How do you encourage further communication? At the end of your cover letter, you're going to tell them in any way that you can, that they should reach out to you anytime and include the contact details for them to reach out to you on. And usually the approach I normally go for is to simply mention that I'm available for an interview at any time. So interview is different to them actually hiring you. So if they say come tomorrow, I can easily make arrangements to go. But then if you think it don't work on your end, you simply look for the wording that will work best for your particular situation. And then when structuring one, you have to include the header and contact information of yourself and the recipient. This is the most important part. So you have to start with your name, surname, address, contact information, and then you go to the other side, you'll give address of the recipient, and then the name of the recipient. It will normally be a company. And if the company mentioned in the job description that this CV has to be sent to Tabiso together with the cover letter, you're going to include Tabiso's name, company under, because you are directing this to Tabiso, company name, company specific address, and then you'll include, it will be addressed in detail, as in from the name of the place, the zip code, and then you'll have your heading that says, I'm applying for this particular position at your company with reference number, if it has a reference number. And then you come with your introduction. You'll have three to four paragraphs on your body. The first paragraph introducing your interest in the job. The second paragraph introducing your skills. The third one introducing, polishing the skills. And then the last paragraph will speak about why you are fit for the job. So what you're going to do for the company. And again, with the cover letter, you have to follow the same approach of telling them what you're going to do for them more than what they can do for you. So you can say what they can do for you. If you are a fresh graduate, you are trying to get maybe an experiential training, an internship. That's where you can say, I want you guys to give me the opportunity to grow and develop. But then if you are somebody who has worked before, you've been working in a particular sector, you have to show them that this is the solution I can bring to the company. This is the difference I'm gonna make for your company. And then you have to address a specific person, as I said. You mentioned it, your company, and then you tailored everything on from the introduction all the way to the end of it. It shows that this is a letter. So you follow the same method as writing a letter to somebody. And if you don't have details of the hiring manager, you simply mention the company name. Dear sir or madam sounds a bit respectful, and then you go with your cover letter. I don't know if we have questions on the cover letter before I go to the example CV.
Yes, Tabi, so we do have a question in the chat box, but this question is in relation to the actual CV. The question is asking what systems can the users utilize, seeing that Canva is not ATS compliant. Is it advisable that people use the CV templates provided on their laptops? And would you advise that should people include their photos on their CV or not? Thank you. And the question was asked by Lesejo.
Okay, thank you for the question. So to start with the first part of the question, you mentioned the platform you can use for the CV. I always say the best platform to use for drafting a CV is either Microsoft Word, and if you do not have access to Microsoft Word or don't have Microsoft Word at all, use there's one called Google Docs or something like that. I don't remember the name correctly, but then the two are almost similar. You're going to write your CV on Microsoft Word, and then once drafted, everything all in order, you save it as a PDF document. That way, when you upload it on any system, it won't lose its chronology or anything, alignment even. And then how to test that your CV won't lose chronology or alignment. You simply type your CV in Word or any other reliable platform, and then you save it as a text file. So there's text, there's your document, there's PDF, you save it as text. If you save your CV as text and things don't look the same as they would look on the original document, maybe your experience went to references, the references are now on the introduction, it means your CV will do the same thing with the ATS platform. So you test it there first, and then if it works on the text format, you can now be confident enough to use it on the other, or rather you can now be confident enough just to use it for ATS friendly platforms. And then in terms of the Canva and other platforms CVs, their structure all in all is good. But then those, I would advise using them only if you're going to send a CV via email. So if you're going to send an email to me to say, hi, Tabi, so I saw you're hiring for a particular job, it's okay to use Canva, because mostly if you are emailing your CV, I'll open the CV myself. But if you're going to upload a CV on websites, so most companies use websites, they use service providers such as your Workforce, your Direct Hire. If you're going to upload it on NetBank takes you to a platform, and then you create a profile, you upload your CV. If it's from Canva, sometimes, in most cases rather, it's going to lose its alignment. And then on the other question of, what was the question again?
Tabi, so we do have a second question from Mulalo. I would just request that they just directly communicate with you because I'm unable to paraphrase it in a shorter version because they're speaking directly of their personal experience. So can they please unmute and just ask you the question directly?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Tabi, so while we're waiting for Molalo, we have another question from Sibabalwe. Her question is, what is the best way to tailor a CV for jobs that use applicant tracker systems?
I think the best way is to, again, with some of the tips I've given, start with the job description, and then you try to match the CV to the job description. So by matching the CV to the job description, you don't necessarily have to copy everything from the job description to your CV, but then simply substantiating what you have versus what they are looking for. So if they say they are looking for somebody who's good at building 1, 2, 3, you're going to mention how you're good at building 1, 2, 3. And it has to not be a lie. You have to speak about what you actually have.
Thank you. Mulalo, you are free to speak. Sorry for mispronouncing your name.
Okay, thank you for the time. Oh, my question is, while he was busy presenting about the CV, like I'm a legal practitioner, who have been like doing litigation specifically for few areas. But I realized that I have an interest in corporate and other admin work like legal advising and all those stuff. So I wanted to know on my CV as it is, because the most experience that I have is going to court, is litigation. I didn't do much on admin and all that and other things that are needed maybe in corporate. And I realized I lack such skills and experience. So in my CV, if I'm interested, like now I'm applying for legal advising positions, how do I tailor my CV on skills and experience and whatsoever? Yeah, that's basically um, my questions. Yes, I don't know
Thank you
if.
for the question. And I think the simplest way to approach that will start again with the company you will be applying for at the time. So let's say, so companies differ, even if it's going to be, you're going to be maybe their senior legal counsel or junior legal counsel or legal advisor or even admin. They differ depending on what services they provide, what their culture is like, and a lot more. So it will start with that. You have to know what type of company you're going to be applying for. And I'll give you an example of a bank, because those are companies that mostly hire people for corporate roles. You're going to be applying maybe at Standard Bank for a senior legal counsel role. You have to look at what they are looking for. Even though you were in litigation, and there's quite a few things that you would do that require litigation within the company, but then there is quite a number of things as a lawyer that you are good at that can be used for the benefit of the company. So you're going to mostly use that as your leverage towards the company. So if maybe it's a matter of contracts, most of the times, even if you are a litigator or you are in private practice, there's certain times whereby you do contracts here and there for clients, and then contracts come again. At Standard Bank, they need to have a contracts team. They need to have a legal team that will review contracts, a contracts management system. You can come in there and be that person that actually helps with maybe the knowledge of drafting them from scratch, reviewing them, updating them when there's a need, advising on some of the terms that are in the contracts that do not need to be there. So usually for a company like that, what they will need from you is for you to try to protect them against any supplier who's trying to maybe exploit them or any customer. So you look at the contracts and then advise on the best way to go ahead. So that's just one example. So the issue of contracts, and then the other things you'll also look at depending on the company you're applying for. I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I also maybe try and assist Mulalo?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mulalo, so you basically need to take your current experience, right? And not just write that I only know litigation or I've only done litigation, because when you prepare for litigation, you are partly advising the client for whom you are busy preparing that litigation for. So instead of talking to the client, you advise using paper. So what you should be saying in your CV is that you do have advisory experience from your approach to drafting pleadings and summons, because you are actually giving advice. You're advising your client in terms of how you're going to approach the case in court. So it's just a matter of wording. And admin is like, people think admin is knowing how to file this and the other. Even as a student, you were keeping admin of your studies, you were keeping admin of your exams and whatever else. So that is admin. How you manage your files, how you go to the clerk of the court and you know on what date you must appear, on what date you need to return. That is admin. So just find the words and do not diminish. Never ever say, I just do this or I just do that. Take that, approach it in such a way that I do litigation. However, for me to even get the case to court, there are steps that I must take before that those documents get onto paper. Show them what you can do. Remove the word I just or I'm only doing litigation. So you can say in your CV, in preparation for litigation, I do the following: research, analysis, advice. You understand? So use words like that. I identify the problem, I assess it, I create control mechanisms, I create solutions. In that process, in order to prepare for litigation, there are other matters that other items that I need to take care of from an administrative nature. You don't have to say what that is sometimes. From an administrative nature, I take care of these matters, because I can promise you it is just the how that you package yourself, right? And Thabisa, I know I'm taking over your session now, but I'm so passionate about this. So in my company, we deal with the 5 W's and H. You must describe, why am I applying? You must know, what are you applying for? Where are you applying? When are you applying? Who are you applying to? And how? So learn to answer those 5 W's and H in everything that you do, how you put your CVs together, who you apply to, and please don't apply for jobs where you know you don't even stand a chance. But a legal advisor job, as you, Malalo, you would qualify. Just use the right wording so that you can attract like the right employer. Thanks, Thabiso. That's my contribution.
Thank you so much for that. And I think it adds on, or it supports the earlier point I made about transferable skills. So transferable skills would be, it's something you have, it can work for the other company, even though you didn't get it in that particular sector, and then you showcase it. And then I don't see a reason why they wouldn't give you an opportunity. Do we have any other question before I go to the next part? So,
You may proceed, Thabiso. For now, we've answered all of the questions.
okay, thank you. So this is just an example that I wanted to show everyone as part of the presentation. I applied for a job through LinkedIn about a year ago. I think it was November 2025. And then on the job, this is the job description from Adams and Adams. They were looking for a junior compliance officer. They gave all the details. So as I kept on mentioning, the job description is the guide that will give you the information that you need for your CV. So they mentioned things like the person has to know privacy and data protection. The person has to be good with POPIA, FICA compliance, or due diligence. The person has to know BEE, anti-corruption. So they mentioned quite a number of terminologies that are within my role. I would say the same person they were looking for is similar to the job that I'm doing currently. And at the time I had 2 years experience, and they were looking for somebody who has between 1 to 3 years experience. They were looking for somebody with an LLB, and then the person also had to understand what we call a CRMP within compliance. So this is the CV I drafted for the role. So I start with my name, the address. So with the address, I always prefer simply limiting it for personal information purposes. So it will just be the suburb you live in, the city, and the province. So Midrand, Johannesburg, Gauteng, my contact number, both of them, in case they can't find me on the other, the email address, and the LinkedIn URL. And then the first thing I started with was with what I normally just call the catchphrase. So this part, and maybe let me get the pointer. Let me see. Yeah, there. So this part, it simply works to show them what you have before even going into the CV. So they said they want somebody with an LLB, somebody who is in compliance, somebody who understands a CRMP, and they kept on mentioning CRMP in their job description. So I also mentioned it on the catchphrase. So I'm a compliance administrator. I have the LLP they are looking for, the CRMP they are looking for. And then under here, I start substantiating everything to show where did I get these skills. And then simply with the professional summary, I simply tailored it to say, this is me. I have the 2 years experience. They're looking for one to 3 experience. You mentioned 2 years. So already you are tailoring the experience requirement on your CV without copying what they have on the job description. And then mention the mention of the qualification together with the other qualifications. I did a short course on Papaya with ENS Africa, and they kept on mentioning Papaya on their job description. I mentioned that as well. And then I also demonstrated how I work a lot with some of the things they have required on the job description within my role on a day-to-day. And as you can see, this is not word for word what they, and maybe let me go back to the description. It's not word for word what they have required here. Here they mention it differently to say your papaya, the job description, or rather the 3 years experience, GDPR, and a lot others. But then on the other side, on the CV, it's the same things, but then the sequence is different. So whoever is going to be looking at the CV will simply know as they get in here that this person is qualified for the role because of a number of the mentioned qualifications. And then again, the key achievements, I thought it was important to mention some of the key achievements because they matched the role. If they didn't match the role, I wouldn't include this section. So I'm a data protection champion for the compliance department. And they kept on mentioning how they want somebody in data protection. And then I drafted a Papaya compliance framework for the group. And I think this was something that they needed to know in case they don't have one, and in case I'm going to be required to develop one for the role as well. And then here I speak about my job at the moment. I spoke earlier about quantifying your duties. Here I mentioned how I've vetted over 500 entities globally and locally. And this is just to answer their question on whether I can do due diligence. I see we have a hand raised. Yeah, you can ask the question. I see we have a hand. I just can't tell.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I just wanted to ask, so does this mean we have to do a different CV for every single job application we do, so that obviously it links to the whatever they're asking for, experience and all that? We mustn't have a generic that we send to every job application.
It's two-way. You can have a generic CV that you will send to most jobs, and then you also need to have one that you edit each and every time you apply for a job. So why do I say it's two-way? The reason is because you find sometimes you are applying for a law firm in a particular city, maybe a law firm in Pretoria that deals with family law. You have already tailored your CV for family law. And now you apply for 4 other law firms that deal with the same thing. You just use that same CV. But then if it's going to be a specific other company, maybe you are trying to venture into something else, or it's a whole new company altogether with new services, you have to tailor it for that specific.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So can I just add one little thing there as well?
Okay.
Okay. So my view is that you should have, as Tabiso says, it's a two-way. So for example, if Tabiso has got this CV, if he's applying for a job where they want certain other elements that are not captured in his CV, he would then have to ensure that he adds those and then he removes the ones that are not relevant. So you cannot just send a generic CV to everybody. You need to make sure that your CV is responsive to the application, because if you don't do that, then we just take it, we put it on the left because this person didn't even read what the job is about. Meanwhile, you do have that experience, you just didn't make sure that your CV matches. What I used to do in the olden days, when I still used to submit my CV, I would actually sit and make sure that my bullet points answers the questions. So if they say they want these 5 things, I make sure my bullet points answer those 5 specific things, and my achievements would make sure that it sort of ties in what it is that they look for. And do not discount things that you do say in church or whatever, because it shows that you have leadership skills. And also you take initiative, because even as an employer, I think somebody here online I actually invited because of how he actually just got my attention. We also like people who are proactive, right, and creative, because law is not boring, especially if you're going to work in corporate and commercial law or in compliance and risk. You need to have innovation in your blood. But if you're just going to say, I apply for compliance administrator, I'm sending this job. I'm applying for compliance assessor, I'm sending the same CV. I'm applying for risk and compliance, I send the same CV. We take it, we put it on the left because you didn't take an effort. So just make sure that you tailor your CV, make sure that even if it's bullet points, make sure that you answer just like a lawyer thinks. The question must be answered, right? Question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. This is who I am. This is what I can do. Leadership skills. I did this and that and that. So yeah,
That's
thanks.
clear. Thank you so much. It helps.
Thank you so much for that.
Tawiso,
Yeah.
before we continue, can we please just answer one final question? It was from the CEO. She asked, how can we maximize algorithms for word matching when we write CVs? And
I think
thereafter, once you've done answering that question, can you also please take the question from Mtutuzi? I see that they raised their hand. I don't know if it was by mistake or if it was intentional. If so, Duduzi, once Utabiso has responded, feel free to ask your question.
Thank you. So I was just saying, I think the best way is to look at some of the, or rather look at similar roles. So if you're going to be, maybe you are trying to update a CV for a similar role as mine, and you have seen my CV somewhere, maybe online, or even on the LinkedIn profile, I've included some of my details. You can simply, not necessarily copy and paste, but then you can use that as inspiration to create your own. So even though some of the wording may be hard to create, hard to come with, sometimes it's best to just start somewhere, have something that will give the inspiration. And if it's hard again to put the right wording for something, you simply use the same wording that you think is not the right wording and ask AI to maybe polish it for you. Sometimes I do that. If I'm trying to send an email to a very serious executive whom I don't know what to say before what, I'll just write the email as it is, ask AI to rewrite it and at least make it a bit concise. And then that way you'll have something that looks good with all the wording straight and easy for anyone to read through.
Hello? Hello, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, thanks, Tabiso. Well, it was a mistake, but I mean, who am I to be against the universe? It sort of wanted me to comment, and maybe I should just chip in that regard. I think what stood out for me, it's just what Ms. Mashobane has just raised, with regards to the proactiveness, the reality is that the current unemployment rates in South Africa, you find out that even if it's just one post, but the number of application requires even the recruiters to sort of consider slightest mistakes to sort of eliminate within the application itself. You find out that things such as, for instance, grammar or spelling can just eliminate you, out of a number of people who has applied, and I think what triggered me mostly, it's the part that talks about the fact that one should show the fact that you are also proactive, and I think that sort of sets you apart. And it just shows that you also pay attention to detail, you know, and you've engaged with the application itself or the job description itself, you know. So I think it's important to sort of tweak your CV from time to time whenever you apply for any role. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Mduduzi. I fully agree. It's always important to ensure that your CV is up to date and not only just up to date, but then also matches what's happening currently. You can have a CV from 2012 and still using it now. So, and then here I just made an example of sending a CV via email. So the other thing I think was quite important to note is how important it is to always ensure that your email is brief. So simply just saying, dear hiring manager, or if you know who it is, dear, the name of the person, mention you would like to apply for a particular role, and then tell them to have your CV attached. And if any supporting documents are there, you also mention that. And then you just thank them and then show them that you are available for an interview. And then you close it off. I've seen quite a number of candidates who would write an email as a cover letter. I wouldn't advise that. You only need to do that if they said it in the job description that you should do that. So some companies do not mind, but then they say it in the job description. If they haven't said anything, stick to the simplest email possible. And then part of today's session was to also review 2 CVs that were sent to me by the team. And then these CVs on the left side, you would see the template is almost similar to what I was showing recently. And then on the right side is the CV I received to look at and just try to make a sense of some of the details and then give comments on that. So starting with the one we have here, I won't mention any names, but then if you can see at the top, and maybe let me get the laser again quickly. If you can see at the top here, there was supposed to be a name, but then I filtered that out for personal information purposes. So you'll have to start at the top, your name in bold, and then below you'll have your contact details. So again, address, it will have to be suburb, city, province, and then include your postal code if you know it. If you don't, it does not, it won't affect your application. And then you'll have your contact details in that order. And then if you are somebody who's trying to mention a driver's license in your CV, I think it's best to just mention it here. Reason being, I don't think you have to include it in the certificate. So simply just mention it with the contact information or below the contact information. And then again, the catchphrase will just mention what you are at the moment or what you are good at the moment. So it will be one of two, either something you are very good at, you are very experienced at, or what you are currently. And then you'll start with your summary for who you are again, number of experience, number of years experience. And then you mention your skills. So I remember I previously mentioned in the other session that you have to mention both your technical and soft skills. So you mention how you are a good communicator from a soft skills perspective, and then also mention maybe how you analyze cases from a technical perspective. And then you'll go down with, and obviously this will be guided by the job description you would be applying for. So currently for this one, I just made this for the purpose of the session, looking at the information on the CV I was given. And then you'll go on to explain some of the things you've done, what you're good at. And then if you want to If you want to enter a particular sector, you'll mention that. But if you want to enter a job that you have the skills for, you'll mention what you're gonna do for them. And then
Tabiso, can I
yeah,
please suggest before we close, we have one final question in the chat box, and the question is relating to a position that states that the minimum requirement is only grade 12. So the question is asking, in those cases, is there a need to include your higher qualifications, or do you stop at grade 12? So does including your higher qualifications give you a better chance of being interviewed, or do you appear as qualified or as overqualified? Thank you.
thank you for that question. I'd say it depends on the company itself, because sometimes if you include your qualifications, they will think that you are overqualified and you are gonna need a more higher budget than they have. But then sometimes it will put you at a better place to get the job. I've once gotten 2 jobs in the past whereby I included an LLB even though it wasn't required, and they were not law-related jobs, by the way. So it depends solely on the company itself and what type of budget they have and what they want from the candidate. And do we have any other question? Okay.
Hi, sorry, so just one more question.
Yeah.
If you've authored some legal publications, does that go under achievements?
If you have
Authored legal publication.
you create a whole new section and title it publications, and then you'll have the title of your publication and a link if it has
Thank
a
you.
link or it has been uploaded.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Great. And then again, back to the CV, I just want to mention something again with the contact information. I mentioned that it has to be as simple as possible, and you can see on the other CV that the candidate mentioned their ID number, there's the first name and last name, there's gender, and then there's practice number, and a lot more other information. Some of these, I think, whoever is going to be recruiting will have to find them from the supporting documents, if there are supporting documents. And then if they can't find your ID on your CV and they want it, they'll have to call. I think limiting some of the information also helps a lot. And then again, on the other page with the experience, if you can see the approach that has been followed here is with the current experience. Simply for starters, you would see that the experience has been written in the present continuous tense to show that this is things that are being done on an ongoing basis. And then with the previous experience is in the past tense. And then the one thing common amongst all of them is that they start with I just forgot that terminology that they use within HR for this, but then they start with doing words. They start with verb, action words that specify what you're doing. So you are reviewing, you are managing, you are assessing, consulting, you're appearing, managing again. So reporting again, things like that make it a bit understandable for whoever will be going through the CV. And then in closing, just to also review the other CV. This one is for a fresh graduate, and as you can see, it's on a one-pager. And then again, the same approach will follow. It will be the name and surname at the top, the address, the contact details, included a LinkedIn URL if you have, or if you are comfortable doing so. And then they'll have the catchphrase. If you don't know what to write on the catchphrase, you just remove this part and then continue. It does not ruin the CV to not have this on your CV. And then again, with the details, it will go the experience, or not the experience rather, but then the qualification, the skills, the expertise, and then what they know together with what they are trying to achieve. So I mentioned that for graduates, you would mostly specify what you are looking for from the companies other than what you can do for them. And as you can see, the last line simply specifies, and it's generic in a way, specifies how they are looking for a candidate, attend paralegal and other similar roles. And then it will have education, because education is with fresh graduates, education will always have to be the first one, because it's the one that will get you the job. And then with professionals, it's always advisable to start with the profession or the role that you are currently in. And then they'll have your volunteer experience and affiliations, the Women Judges Mentorship Program. If it's PLA, you include here, and a few details. It doesn't have to be many for a fresh graduate. And then extracurricular activities that are relevant to the job you are applying for. Debate is quite relevant to legal roles. Mock trial is obviously relevant as well. And then if it's something else that is not relevant, simply eliminate. And then for this one, you'd see the skills are different from the previous. They have been listed with the personal skills on one side and the technical skills on the other. And then for references, it's two-way. You can either write the references on the CV or simply include as available on request. And as you can see on the initial CV, a lot of the information was somehow clustered, because with the skill, or rather when you open the CV, the first thing you see is the skills and the abilities. So the abilities and skills have to be in one thing. And as you can see on the final product, they've been summarized into a single table. And then here they take up so much space, and it might confuse whoever is going to be reading the CV. And again, this is on that same CV. You can see there's quite a number of differences. Education, again, on the matter of education, it shouldn't be at the last point, because this is the one thing that will make the candidate, or this specific candidate, stand out, because it's a fresh graduate. And then they've mentioned their achievements. An achievement like this, since it relates to the metric, you can also list it under the metric itself. As you can see on the CV, it has been mentioned that the candidate achieved a top learner for performance. And then with the references, as I close, you have to ensure that you list the name of the person. If you do include references, the name of the person, their position at the time when you worked with them, the company, and the contact details, either an email and contact number, or both, or either one of them. Yeah, I think I've covered everything so far, and I'm happy to take any more questions that we may be having. So if you are interested in getting some of these services, or to have your CV reviewed, a cover letter reviewed, or drafted from scratch, somebody to help you with social media branding in terms of your LinkedIn profile, anything that relates to job search, your applications online, you are free to contact me on the number that is shown on the screen currently. So your 078 922 8718, or email me, and then I'll assist you with the particular service that you'd be requiring at the time. And even if it's just a question that you want to ask, you are more than welcome to still reach out to me on the same number or on LinkedIn. Thank you.
They're welcome to mention that they attended this webinar. Busi's got all their details. So when you write to Thabiso, just mention that you were part of the group that we actually organized these webinars specifically for. Because remember, we promised that for those applicants who are not successful, we'll definitely make sure that we assist you, for the future. So Thabiso works with us, and we actually default to him a lot in terms of what are best practices. So please use his services. We don't get a commission from him at all, but I can promise you, if you just ask for the help and you're willing to pay for it, it does take you somewhere. I'm handing over to Busi to close. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Please do note that we do have our third and last session where we will be focusing on the actual interview. So we will be sharing the details on email and also on WhatsApp, and hope to see you soon. Thank you, Tabiso. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Bye. Thank you.
The video will be on
Thank
YouTube for
you.
those who want to take notes. Thanks, guys.